Somebody wants to know who, Nate wants to know who does the pretty voiceover on the podcast intro outro. It's a pleasant female voice, but it doesn't sound like anybody on the team.
Not us.
I think it's
Which
Richie.
podcast? Which podcast?
The office hours.
There's an intro? I didn't even know we had one.
You have to listen to the podcast.
I used to just watch it on YouTube.
I think there's some podcast bias going on here. Richie doesn't listen to that other podcast.
That other podcast, this thing that we're on right now, we don't
Podcast that shall not be named.
It's a loser podcast for losers.
We're gonna have to get Erik on. What do you do when you're away from the keyboard? Look for a tab and down Clarendon. Dude,
I stare in the refrigerator balefully. Sometimes I hit the bathroom, and then I'm right back at the keyboard.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. That's
it. Later.
This was an entertaining office hours.
According to our Slack, it would appear that you are never away from a keyboard at any time.
Yeah,
that's true.
You're at the gym, bench pressing and typing at the same time.
It's true. I actually type with my feet when I'm bench pressing. One time these horrible monkey paws come in handy.
Good thing you got that physical keyboard with the BlackBerry.
I don't have a BlackBerry anymore.
What?
I don't. You keep up with the times. I got a Samsung Galaxy S, some odd number.
7.
Yeah, probably that one. Yeah.
Welcome to the new century, man.
Wasn't the BlackBerry like 3 months old?
Yeah. Apparently, T-Mobile was just like, "You want to get rid of that?" And I was like, "Yeah."
It wasn't all it cracked up to be.
Nice.
I don't know. I still liked it. I had made a deal with myself when I got it, and the deal was, if I use the physical keyboard once a day, I would keep that phone, because that was what I loved about BlackBerry, is the physical keyboard. Turned out I never used the physical keyboard because when you slide things up and do things, it's annoying and changes like the whole typing dynamic. So got rid of it.
Speaking of phones, I learned a new trick last night. If you ask Siri to open the pod bay doors, you'll get a culturally relevant response.
She does a bunch of those. Beam Me Up Scotty gets a response. A bunch of random ones in there. All right, we have 1 minute to go, guys. Get your questions in now, or I'm not reading them.
Ever.
I don't want to talk about the new Star Trek.
We won't talk about it then, Richie.
Why not, Richie?
I won't talk about it.
Why not?
Not Star Trek, that's why.
Why is it not Star Trek?
Because it's not. It's some weird,
I haven't seen the new trailer.
bastardized version of.
It's a Michael Bay vision of Star Trek.
So it's
like Fast and the Furious Star Trek.
Oh. They call it Fast in Space.
Spaceships.
Pew pew.
All right. It's 15 after the hour. We'll read some questions maybe. Tammy's got a question that I think Doug had referenced once. Has anyone installed R for SQL 2016 yet? Have you had any problems? Do you have any idea how to uninstall? It didn't install correctly, but she thinks it installed when she tried to reinstall.
Oh boy. No, I haven't, but I can tell you if you're planning on going to the PASS Summit this year, there are like 5 Intro to R sessions. It's bonkers.
None of them about installing R.
I was just about to say.
Yeah. So.
Good luck installing it.
Yeah.
All right.
You really think that R would get more pirate jokes made out of it? Just like
there is one pirate.
There's one session that makes a pirate joke in the title.
Yeah, you'd think they'd all do it because it's like the most obvious thing. Whatever. Next.
All right. James wants to know what script can he use to get more information on a specific index.
Perhaps you've heard of SP Blitz Index.
By chance.
I haven't.
When you run it, there's literally a column called More Info. with the script to get more info about an index. Read columns to the right. Your job from now on, read columns to the right. Scroll, my friend.
There's also mode 2, which will tell you a lot of particulars about the indexes on a given table if you want to specify a table. So that will give you about as much information as you could possibly need to make whatever decisions you're trying to make about that index.
Mm-hmm. All right. Rizwan says, "Hi guys, I have a question about set statistics IO. What does logical reads mean? Does data being read from memory, or is it being copied to memory?"
Logical reads is being read in memory. If you see the physical reads, when you set statistics IO, there are a whole bunch of reads. So you'll see like physical and read ahead and lob and all the other ones. Physical reads are the ones that you're reading from disk. Logical reads are the one where you're reading from memory.
But won't it count it for both? Because isn't the physical reads from disk, you would read that, and then it would have to read it from memory again?
You know what? I don't do enough looking at that to tell you. If you know from your lovely website statistics parser, then share with the class.
That's all. I don't know. That's what I've noticed, right? So when you're reading from disk, you'll get the same amount or less, right? Or more from the logical stuff. Obviously,
right, but if physical reads is 0, then you're just reading stuff in memory.
Memory, yep. Correct.
Okay. Steve wants to know if there's a rule to start using partition tables. Are you concerned with size or performance first?
Where is that question?
9:15 or
9:15.
12:15. 12:15 time.
12:15 for you.
Aha, there we go. Steve. Partitioning is not a performance enhancement. Don't drink that Kool-Aid, my friend. Partitioning is a manageability enhancement so that you can swap your data in and out without locking the whole table and doing anything crazy. It also allows you to archive stuff back. You can make stuff read-only, puts up on different file groups. It allows you a lot of great management things, not really a lot of great performance things. Kendra, over on her new home, littlekendra.com, has a great roundup of why partitioning is not making your queries faster. If you want to go over there, there's a video and links to several other things where she goes into detail about why partitioning is not a performance enhancement.
And if I remember right, there's a rule of thumb. Was it like 100 million rows or something like that? I think is.
I don't see the thing is, like, I wouldn't want to start partitioning at a table that big. I would want to like if I know that I'm going to have a table like an audit table or something that could potentially get big is when I'd want to do it at the beginning. Because like when you start partitioning at a large table size, it's just obviously some overhead to getting everything lined up.
Yeah, or anything where you're not going to be deleting from the table, you're just going to be adding as time goes on, and you're going to be adding a lot of rows.
Yep.
That's a time where you might want to think about partitioning by, say, year.
For sure.
So what about partition elimination?
What about it?
Is that a performance enhancement?
It's cool when it happens. Good luck getting it to happen.
Use your partition key, I guess.
Yeah, well, your misaligned non-clustered indexes. Watch what happens.
All right, let's reward Richard for asking his question early.
Okay.
Shrinking data files is not recommended because it disorganizes the indexes. Is there less disorganization if you use empty file to move the data in a multi-file file group? If the table has var binary max blobs, does that add any other wrinkles to a file shrink/move besides the size? Why are you shrinking, Richard? Do you have to shrink?
Well, I get empty file, you're moving stuff around. I'm not sure that that's the way I'd choose to move things around, though. I need to know a little bit more about what you're trying to do than just why you're trying to do it. So if it's just like a one-time data move, then, there's some options. As far as the fragmentation and stuff goes, though, I'm actually not sure. I would assume that it uses a fairly similar mechanism to empty file, but or to shrink file. The only difference is that you're not actually shrinking anything, right? Like you're kind of just pushing data out of the one file. So I'm not sure that it is as aggressive as just sort of mashing pages together as an actual file shrink would be.
Well, and one of the reasons that we tend to, as a group, not recommend shrinking data files is because it grew that big for a reason, and if you're going to shrink it, what we're afraid of when we say don't do it is that you're going to get in a cycle where you keep growing and shrinking it, and that's what we want to avoid. But if it got really big for some reason, and you know that that's not going to happen on a recurring basis, then we're actually okay with shrinking data files.
Mm-hmm. Even log files.
Mm-hmm.
I did just tell my clients yesterday that I had faith in them shrinking one giant large log file.
What about
right.
regrowing it? So,
No.
No faith in that
Actually, I used one of the default ones where it says shrink it to 1 meg and then grow 25% of the database size. Their log file was 30 gigs. Their data file was 6.
That's an interesting choice.
Yeah, and the log file was almost completely empty.
Yeah. Nate has a question about using CLR in SQL. Do you have a quick how-to, or if it's too much to cover on air, a blog post or article to point him to?
Richie.
I think Adam Mechanic has some stuff up there, as well as there's a video from TechEd a few years back that he kind of goes in some of that stuff. That's a good, actually, post to do. I know I've got a demo on my site that kind of goes into it a little bit. I have to remember what presentation that was a part of, but there's a cat. But it's actually not too bad. It's not as hard as you think it is. Testing it's a little bit of pain, but once you get the hang of it, it's not bad at all.
Adam Mechanic does have a cool blog post where he was writing a CLR string splitter to try and beat out some SQL, like pure T-SQL implementations of it. And there's a link there to a pretty cool thread on SQL Server Essential where it goes through all the feedback and like figuring out how to do stuff. I've done it once, and like DBA compiling DLL was like me just mashing knuckles on the keyboard. It's horrible.
Oddly similar to me, by the way.
There we go.
All right, Dennis wants to know what the best way is to stress test a large SQL server with 60 cores, a terabyte of RAM, SAN, SSD, XYZ, etc. Our IT claims the server randomly reboots due to heat, but has no other information available. He wants to try and recreate the problem.
You want to try to overheat that thing?
I hope this isn't the production server. Although based on the 60 cores, I would hope that that's not sitting around in development either. So for something like this, there are a few tools you can use. There's Ssrs, and there's also one called HammerDB, but HammerDB is a little bit harder to configure. It's a little older too. So those would be two stress testing tools. There's also, just for the pure I/O side of things, there's SQL I/O, which probably don't want to run on a production box just because it can hammer to the SAN to the point where it shuts down. So I would probably start with Ssrs if you're looking for a tool that will simulate a heavy production load.
And with a server like that, it sounds like you have some money. So if you want to do something a little bit fancier, Dell has, well, at least for now, until software gets sold off to whoever, has a tool called Benchmark Factory, and that can really throw some heat at your server if you're interested in spending money on it.
All right, we'll see if we can answer this question without Tara. From Andrew, we're on 2008 R2 SP3, and they're doing log shipping to another 2008 R2 SP3 server. The log shipping server is also the replication publisher. Is there any way to change the primary to the secondary permanently and have replication follow, or do you need to redo replication on the new primary?
Nope. I don't know.
Test it in dev and find out. Sorry, Tara's not here. Replication
I'm still trying to make sense of that question. Change the primary to the secondary. So change the log shipper to the log shippee. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. And then
Okay,
they
so
want to.
Yeah, at some point you'd have to have a cutover where you freeze what happens on the primary, and then you'd have to kind of burn all the log shipping down, set it up again. Yeah, replication and log shipping are two completely different features, so I don't think there's anything you can do with log shipping to make replication magically flip sides. I think you're going to have to stop everything, tear down what you've got, and then reconfigure it, both for log shipping and for replication.
Yeah, I think you can repoint log shipping, but replication's scary, so without Tara, test on your own.
Well, and I'd be a little nervous to repoint log shipping exactly in the other direction without knowing that everything was stopped.
Yeah. All right. Gordon wants to know if there's a DMV that will give him information on which page types other than PFS, GAM, and SGAM are causing contention.
If you're running SP who is active, it will tell you which pages are in trouble if you're in fact waiting on pages. So if you're running stuff and you think there's contention on a particular page, you can run that and it will tell you, where it's happening if it is page contention. So like it'll tell you, like for TempDB, it'll show you like page latch, and it'll tell you, it'll give you some more information about the pages that it's hitting. So I would go right to SP who is active and try to run that and see what's going on rather than trying to roll your own query. If you want to look at what SP who is active is hitting to give you that information, you can do that, and you can try to maybe reverse engineer a small part of it to get some page type weights.
Okay, Tommy wants to know, do we have a script or process that can be used to copy permissions, users, etc. for SSRS to a new SSRS server? Doug.
So we don't. There's an older script that is, it's a script that is sort of retired, but it's still out there if you can find it. RS Scripter. That's a tool that will allow you to basically just take an instance of a reporting server database and move it somewhere else. The other thing that you can do is reporting services, at least before 2016, and 2016 may not have changed, but it was conveniently compartmentalized to everything being stored in the database. So there are a few configuration settings in like XML files, .config files, but the stuff like users is all stored in just straight up database tables. So it's the kind of thing where if it's a production instance, you want to be careful. Try this out in dev first, where you basically take the existing reporting services database, that would be the report server database probably, and then take the settings out of there from like the users and security tables and move them over to the new instance somewhere in dev. Turn it on, make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. But one thing you might run into is when you do that, if you try to go to the site on the new server, you may get like permission denied, access is denied error. When that happens, you just have to open Internet Explorer run it as administrator, then go in and assign your user or group permissions to see the home folder. It's a common problem even when you aren't moving databases around, so just be aware of that too.
I've run into that a few times before. It was like, why does this work only in run as admin?
Yeah.
Speaking to Doug, Tim wants to know when your new video is going to be released.
Oh, fairly soon. I would expect before the end of July. I don't have a date, but it's coming pretty soon.
Yay!
They look awesome, though. So
thanks.
Get those credit cards ready.
Yeah.
Or PayPal, I don't know. Your mom's checkbook.
Don't tell your wife.
Or you
How
paid
much
for
you
it.
really paid for it.
Mike wants to know with SAN drives if it's important to keep data files and log files and tempdb all on different drives if using a SAN non-SSD.
Not really. You can, I mean, it's all working off the same sort of spread out shared pool of stuff anyway, so you don't have to sweat it as much. That was a good rule of thumb back when you had, direct attached storage. The only time I'd really break from that is if you're in a non-VM environment and you do have sort of higher grade of drives for certain things, then I would, of course, put tempdb on, SSD or flash. But if it's all the same pool of spinning disks, then it doesn't really matter so much.
Yeah, you just don't want tempdb to get promoted and demoted all the time. You want it to just stay in the top tier if you have tiering.
Okay. Wes wants to know. Oh,
Sorry.
Brent is already asked that one. That's totally fine. We will keep going. Sorry.
I only knew about that blog post off the top of my head because shortly after I started working here, I wrote a blog post about common table expressions, and the first comment on it was from Adam Mechanic, who had written that blog post, and he was just like, guess CTEs are a popular topic this week, and I was like, all right, buddy.
Welcome to Brent Ozar Unlimited.
See you at Summit.
So for those watching/listening, Wes wanted to know if there's a hierarchy ID data type is better to use than a string in a parent field and a child field. And Erik pointed him to Adam Mechanic's blog about reinventing the recursive CTE.
Yeah, buddy.
And now on to Mike, who wants to know if anybody knows of a, quote, fast copy tool. Some of his users continuously want DB refreshes from prod to QA, and sometimes they're several hundred gigabytes in size and take too long to copy.
Replication.
Log ship, maybe.
Yeah.
Standby mode, right?
You could try that. You could take a database snapshot. If you're on a SAN, you could take a SAN snapshot and just pop that on over pretty quick. Aside from that, you're looking at setting up some like Angie said, probably like log shipping, so that you could have the existing copy and just log ship over to it and catch things up when developers need a refresh.
Right, and there's also some development methodologies saying that you maybe don't ever want production outside of production. So essentially your test and QA environments have their own test data that's knowable and it's not production data. So that's something to consider as well. And it's a security risk as well. So because your QA environments aren't usually as locked down as your production environments. So if you've got sensitive data there, you may want to rethink that.
So one really cool thing you can do is if you don't want to go through the hard process of doing this stuff, is you can actually just script out all the statistics for your database. So if you script out all the statistics, you get a copy of your table a copy of your data that mimics, how the data reacts to queries and whatnot, without actually having any data having to exist on the disk itself. And I believe a fellow named Thomas LaRock has a post on how to script out your database statistics. Pictures, pretty pictures, and screen caps and whatnot. So you can head on over there.
Richie, FYI, someone couldn't hear you, so you're going to have to get closer to that mic. Much better.
Get inside the mic.
All right, Richie. Kyle wants to know, they have CLR enabled on their server, but he doesn't know why. Is there an easy way to find out if anything is using it?
Not that I know of, but that sounds really interesting, and I've already made a note of that because I saw the question earlier about investigate how we would do that.
Turn it off and listen for the screams.
What breaks?
So one thing you can do is some of the DMBs that record query execution stuff record CLR time, so you can just check those out and see if there's any CLR time being recorded in your on your server. I believe there's also if you look at specifically at functions, I think there's a flag in one of those DMVs that tells you if it's a CLR function. So like it'd be like is CLR or something. I don't have a more specific answer because I've never really gone searching for it.
He said he's considering the try pull the plug method.
You could do that.
Okay. I don't know if this question is direct enough, but Paige wants to know if there's a way to automate always-on availability groups to all replicas when a new database is created on the primary.
In 2016, there is. You can use a feature brand new to availability groups called direct seeding. That's SEEDING, not SEATING. So that's pretty cool. Before that, no. There are a bunch of questions on dba.stackexchange.com that have sort of like the beginnings of scripts, but the problem is that it's really hard to just write one that works for everyone because you do have to, add the database, take a backup, restore it, or something like that to make it all work. So it's really hard to just write a one-off script that works for everyone. But you can get some examples of beginning scripts if you search on dba.stackexchange.com for availability group automating some form thereof.
All right, do you guys want to answer a question about shrinking or a mysterious missing file?
Yes.
Sure.
All right, so Monica has a database which was sized for future growth at 800 gigs, but they're only using half that. However, other databases have now grown and their data file disk is running out of space. Until they add more disk space, what would be the best way for her to shrink the database file to avoid any downtime?
You could just shrink it and specify the size to 50 or 100 gigs larger than what you have now. Does truncate only work on data files?
I don't know.
Because if truncate only works on data files, you could throw the truncate only flag on there and it would just lop off the free space.
Would you use the GUI or would you script it out?
I would script it out because I'm weird like that.
Paranoid.
Because I spent a lot of money on SQL prompt.
Truncate only used to work on logs, but I think they got rid of that.
No, truncate only works as a command on log. It doesn't work as a backup command on log.
Oh, okay. That's what they got rid of.
Yeah, so that doesn't work, but it still works as a DABCC shrink file command. I've never tried it on a data file, so I don't know.
Yeah. Back when I was a web developer, I used to run into log file problems all the time, and I just back up log with truncate only. Whee!
Goodbye.
That's how I solved every problem I had.
All right, let's try to tackle Mike's mystery. He's on SQL 2012 with a 2-node cluster. They have a log shipping to a reporting server. They did a Windows update reboot, and the shared folder on the cluster where log shipping copies from became invisible to the reporting server. They couldn't re-add it or share it. They had to create a new shared network name to get it going again. Any idea what may have caused that?
Nope.
Yeah, me either. I was going to say talk to your sysadmin.
Shared folder.
Nice posters there, Doug.
Permissions, maybe? Are you sure this wasn't a permissions issue? Like, you could temporarily try flipping the security thing to everyone and see if it can see it then, and if not, then we're getting a lifestyles of the rich and famous tour.
Yeah, just to prove. Clinton tells me to buy a poster, man, because I'm behind a giant blank wall here, and yeah, it is kind of blank, but
buy more posters.
I do have other stuff in the room. I'm not being interrogated.
Except for by you, Clinton.
Yeah.
Get an X-wing behind you, Doug. Come on, man.
Richie, what's the shuttle behind you? One of the shuttles, maybe.
That is a Lego shuttle that they came out of about 5 years ago, along with the Slave One, the TIE Fighter, and an X-wing. There you go.
What Star Wars shuttle?
Cool.
Space thing is that, Doug? Oh, yeah, sound.
Your move, Rump.
I could break mine to 1,000 pieces, but I'm not going to because I don't want to put it back together.
All right.
Don't you have a model of the Challenger back there?
Yeah, what is back there?
Too soon, man. Too soon. Too soon.
Didn't that happen before I was born?
Probably. I was
Really
a
that
kid.
soon?
Oh, ouch.
Stop it.
Ouch.
Speaking of new things, Richard says Microsoft seems to be touting that SQL Server 2016 is production ready now, and that shops are using it in production since pre-release. Given its many performance and other features, do you feel it's solid enough to deploy in production now, or would you wait for a particular number of CUs or service packs?
I would just roll that sucker out. No, so it is pretty much production ready. It is an RTM, you know, you're gonna have your problems, but the things that I would want to do is start running everything on it in production immediately, and then because Microsoft changed the way they're supporting things. So like you're not going to get a service pack. There's no guarantee of a service pack. You're going to get cumulative updates every so often when they feel like it. So who knows how long you'd be waiting. If you want to upgrade, the only thing I'd be really careful of is the new cardinality estimator stuff, which I think Doug looks like he wants to talk about.
Well, that hasn't really changed since 2014. So if you're on 2014, then you already know what the cardinality estimator is going to do. But there's also features like the query store that will allow you to go back and look at what happened, which is pretty exciting because we've never had the ability to do that in SQL Server before without using a monitoring tool. So that's pretty exciting. And there's a bunch of other stuff, obviously like R, that are new in 2016. So if that sort of thing excites you, then you can rush out to that too. I know a lot of shops will go like one CU behind, basically. And Microsoft is committed to doing more frequent CU cycles now, as well, so they say, as opposed to going like a year plus between full-blown service packs. So updates will be happening supposedly quicker. So if you did want to wait, you wouldn't have to wait as long if your old policy was to wait for the first service pack.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. I'm hoping Richie can help us with this one.
Mm-hmm.
James wants to know what database diagramming /ERD tool or tools you recommend.
I think there's three big ones out there. One I've never used, so I'm not even going to mention it. The other two is Irwin, and it's now Idera's ER Studio. Both are really good. Both do comparable things. Take a look at them. Both are fairly expensive per seat. So if you're trying to get it for the entire team, it's going to be pretty pricey. So I would talk to either of those and take a look at it. My personal preference is ER Studio, but that's only because I've used it longer than Irwin. So take the demo, take them for a whirl. They both are very similar, and check them out.
It's also Oracle SQL Developer, if you're just kidding.
No love for Visio?
Well, diagramming tools, it's not really a tool.
Right.
Something else.
It's SSIS that doesn't do anything.
They bought Visio for BizTalk, and only BizTalk. So.
All right, that's two more mentions of BizTalk than I want to deal with.
Great. Let's get out of here.
We're at something 46 past the hour, so let's go back to work.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming.